A common question amongst cyclists is how to keep your hands and your feet warm when you're riding in cold weather. But the answer is coming up, a result of some hard-earned lessons and indeed some handy hints. See what I did there? So why do we get cold hands and cold feet then? Well, the first point is that the wind chill when we ride is much higher than if we were walking or running. Because the speeds are higher, the wind blows over our bodies and it cools us down. And then of course, there are also times when we're actually not really exerting ourselves. Now, that's certainly not the case right now, as I'm riding halfway up a mountain. But when I get to the top and descend down the other side, I'm effectively going to stop pedaling. And to make it worse, the wind chill is going to get significantly higher. Meaning that in order to keep warm, my body is going to keep all the blood flow around my core and then neglect my poor extremities. So what do we do about it then? Well, starting with our hands, the simple answer is just to put on a pair of gloves. But doing that doesn't guarantee that you will get warm hands. You need to put a little bit more thought and a bit more planning into it. And certainly investing in a cycling specific pair of gloves is a very good idea, because although normal gloves might keep your hands warm, of crucial importance is being able to hold onto your handlebars, change gear and brake. So what are the options? What should we buy? We mentioned the effect of wind chill earlier on, so if you are buying just one pair of winter cycling gloves, make sure they're made out of a windproof material, certainly on the back of the glove, but I think over the whole glove itself. That is going to, of course, protect your hand from the chilling effect of the wind, and it's also going to do so with minimal bulk, so you maintain that all-important control over the bike. Now, as the temperature plummets, you will of course need to add some insulation into the mix as well. So a layer underneath that windproof barrier is going to keep your hand warm. There is also the opportunity to layer your gloves. So just like you would with any other part of your body, you could wear a thinner pair of gloves underneath your thicker pair of gloves. And then really cold weather gloves will actually have your fingers in the same compartment, so like a lobster effect. And while that's not ideal for riding, it's certainly better than a mitten, and if you've got no other option, if it's that cold, then they are absolutely great. However, if the weather is like it is today, i.e. a little bit damp, then you want a different glove again. So one that is waterproof, or indeed one that is made out of neoprene, so that's like a wetsuit material. It is not waterproof, but it keeps your hand warm when it's wet, by using that water as an insulative layer between your hand and the glove. The only thing you've got to bear in mind with these is that your hand needs to be warm before you actually put it on. Otherwise, you'll just get colder. Having the right gloves, though, will not guarantee you having warm hands. We also need to think about keeping our bodies warm and our arms warm as well, because that way we're keeping that blood flowing down into our extremities. So again, choosing something with windproof fabric is going to help protect your arms. It doesn't have to be a dedicated cycling jersey, even just a waterproof jacket is going to do that job really well. And then there's also the question of effort. So long, steady rides in cold weather are really hard to keep warm during. And so actually maybe you need to think about riding in a slightly different way. So going out, riding shorter but harder, and that way you will stay warmer still. So what about feet then? Having cold feet is absolutely grim. But fortunately, there are some easy and inexpensive wins to be had. The obvious one being overshoes. So literally an item of clothing that goes over the top of your cycling shoe, blocking out the wind and keeping not just your foot but also your ankle nice and toasty. There are loads of different types on the market, from thin ones that are there purely for aerodynamics, through windproof ones, neoprene ones, right up to warm, insulated, fleecy lined ones. Now, just like with gloves, there is an optimum overshoe for seemingly every temperature, but unlike gloves, actually, I think you can get away with just one really thick, warm pair. So I don't think I've ever suffered from hot feet particularly, and nor do you have the problem of losing control over your bike. The only downside of thick overshoes is they can make your feet look a little bit big. Now, why overshoe and not under sock? Well, to get the same level of insulation out of a sock, it's going to need to be really thick, meaning that your shoe could then end up being really tight. And that will mean that actually the circulation to your foot ends up being restricted. So actually, despite having that insulation, you get a correspondingly colder foot. So much better to lay it over the top of your shoes. Now, you can't argue with the fact that an overshoe is probably the best combination of value and function, but you may well find that a dedicated winter bootie is a great investment. So there is no mesh, no ventilation, it's just a waterproof and warm shoe. Great for really cold conditions, but also great if you spend any time getting off your bike and walking, which is an activity that will make light work of an overshoe. Now, before we leave the issue of feet for good, I need to hand over to my esteemed colleague for one particularly infamous pro tip.
Well, thanks very much, Si. This is a technique that I've been using for years to keep my feet warm in the depths of winter. Get some decent quality foil, simply wrap your foot in them over your sock, get your shoe, place your shoe over your befoiled socked foot, tighten things up, and there we go. Make like a jacket potato.
So what do you need to remember then to banish numb hands and numb feet? Well, first you need to think about the type of riding that you're doing. So shorter, harder rides are likely to leave you with warmer hands and feet, and longer, slower rides. Then it's not just about wrapping up your extremities, remember, it's also about keeping your torso warm, your arms warm, and your legs warm. When it does come to protecting those hands and feet though, bear in mind windproof fabric for gloves. They are worth their weight in gold. And then also the concept of an overshoe. Completely bizarre to non-cyclists, but once you've tried them, you will never go back. Now do make sure you subscribe to GCN before leaving this video. To do so, just click on the globe. And if you're after some more content, we've got how to dress for riding in the mountains, including a hack to keep your hands warm this time. That's definitely worth a watch. Or for some winter riding tips, click just down there.